if you think about it, you can't see music, you can't hold it in your hand, you can't touch it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. Has no physical weight to it. And yet, 20,000 people will pack a stadium to have their eardrums tickled. the tiniest organ in your body, your eardrums. And then the sense of other vibrations that are hitting your body in a way that, this sound, this bass, this rhythm, these words, all these things combined that bring out emotion in you. And there's like a real magic to that, and it's so difficult to describe, and yet it is so tangible to everyone who experiences it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Why Music Matters podcast. I'm your host, music journalist and musician Jeff Miers. Throughout my life in and around music, I've often asked myself the question, why does music matter? This podcast will attempt to answer that question with the help of musicians, members of the music industry, and music lovers like you. Today on Why Music Matters, I'll be speaking with Michael Franti, musician, singer-songwriter, poet, activist, and social justice advocate. Franti recently performed an emotional, jubilant show with his band Spearhead at Artpark in Lewiston, New York. And he took some time prior to that gig to talk about music as an agent of transformation in his own life and in the lives of his listeners. Thanks for joining us on Why Music Matters.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Michael, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, no worries.
And we're looking forward to tomorrow seeing you at Artpark again, man.
Nice.
Yeah, we're psyched for you coming back to Buffalo. Thanks for being on the podcast. Like, this is called Why Music Matters, and I'm trying to get at the heart of music's power to kind of speak to us and unite us across, physical borders and cultural borders. And man, you really popped into my head because I'm like, this man's entire career has been about that.
Thank you.
So I appreciate you, and I'm wondering. You said in the past that when you write, it's always to get to a place of transformation. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that process of transformation. Is it emotional transformation, chemical transformation, both? What does that mean to you?
Well, my mission through music is, and everything I do with our hotel and the retreats that I lead and everything, is to inspire change, so that people may inspire change in others. Yeah, and everybody has a different idea of what change is. And I think earlier on in my career, I was thinking, well, what's my change I want to see in the world? And how can I impart that on the other people, like political ideas or social ideas or movements, but as I've grown older and hopefully wiser.
Yeah, that's what we
realized hope. I realized that everyone in their life has something that they want to change. For one person, it's like, I want to lose 40 pounds. For the next person, it's like, I want to be able to, do this trick on my skateboard. And the next person, it's like, I want to make sure that the river in our community is clean for generations to come. And everyone has something in their life that they want to change. And when we feel empowered to do that, we get closer to what I can think is as universality, where there's this connection between people, because as everyone evolves, they learn more and they become more enlightened about the world, about humanity and nature, and so when I write music, I always write from my place of deepest emotions. And it could be deep joy and celebration and elation, or it could be deep sorrow and mourning. And when I write from those places, I'm always, because I'm wanting to create change in my own life personally, I'm always writing about those experiences from me that were how I got to the other side. So I don't really ever write songs that are just about the pain without showing the light, you know?
And we thank you for that, man. Cause
Yeah. And conversely, I don't really write songs that are just about the joy without talking about the pain, you know?
yeah.
For example, like the song The Sound of Sunshine, which is this, you know, really bubbly and happy and joyous song. It talks about how, you know, I wake up in the morning every day and um, I wonder how I'm going to get through my life and how I'm going to get through my day. And here I am waiting for the storm to pass me by. And then appears the sound of sunshine, you know? And so I always try to write songs that transform within the song. And I write all the songs for either myself or the people who are closest to me. You know, I don't think of like, well, what would a mass audience think of this song? I think of that part of it when I'm doing the production of the song, but I don't think of that part of it when I'm doing the writing of the song.
Right.
When I'm doing the writing of the song, I'm really thinking about how does this song, you know, for example, affect my wife? How will she feel when she hears this message in this song or the emotion of this song? And then the other thing is like I'm always just obsessed with this idea that music is the sound of emotions.
Yeah.
You know, music is the sound of emotions. So when I'm then going to produce the song, I'm like, what is the emotion that is being, you know, drawn out in this beat, in this series of chords, in this melody on top of it, in this delivery, in the dynamics of the song and how it builds and grows and evolves and changes. And is it taking the listener on, you know, a journey?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those are the, you know, the key pieces of like, you know, the philosophy and then how I do it. And then, you know, really first, even before that, why I do it.
Why? Yeah. I like the why. And I like that you point out that the light means more because there is darkness, right? I mean, the contrast matters, and I can hear that in your art.
Yeah, it's really hard to write a happy song if you don't have anything to compare it to.
Right.
If you just say happy, 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 happy over and over again, it doesn't. It's not that happy at the end of the song. But if you say, "Hey, I had a really shitty day," and then something in my life turned it around, and it was somebody's smile, or it was this, you know, the dance, or it was, you know, somebody in some way affected me that made me feel alive again. You know, that's a much more powerful way of expressing happiness.
Well said, brother. Well, always throughout everything you've done, you know, you've employed music as a means of fostering a sense of community, you know, among your listeners. And I'm wondering, having felt that at your shows, you know, how do these listeners take that sense of community out into the broader world, you know, once the concert is over and they're back to their everyday lives? In other words, how do we make these transcendent feelings we experience when the music is playing stick?
You know, I can't answer that for every single person, but I can answer it from my own experience.
Yeah, that's what I want.
You know, I know the feeling of going to a concert and feeling this sense of I'm not the only person in the world who feels this way. And I guess the artists that have done that the most for me are U2. I've been to probably 45 U2 concerts.
Me too, man, and I felt it every time.
And every time I go, I always end up feeling this sense of bigness, of like that the world is so much bigger than I am, and yet I'm a part of this thing. You know, it's the same way I feel after I watch like an episode of Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm part of this larger world, and that my role in it has some significance. And like I want people when they come to my shows to walk out of there feeling like just like a little bit taller. Like if you just feel like a quarter inch taller just because you're standing up straighter, and you feel like, whatever is coming at me next, I can face it with optimism, with light, with love, with a sense of humor when things going really fucked up.
Yeah.
That's how I want people to feel. And it does ripple, and then it wears off, and you
Right.
have to find it somewhere else again. And that's like the great wrestle that all of us face in our life. And someone asked me the other day, they're like, how do you stay so positive? And I go, I don't.
Yeah.
Just like anybody else, I wake up in the morning and I feel like I know my purpose. I know why I'm here. I understand what God is. I understand what the universe has in store for all of us. And then by noon, I'm like, there's no fucking God.
Yeah. We
and,
all go there, man.
and what's my what's my role in all this? And so, and I think that if you went and you asked the great, leaders of the world who were the ones that you would hold up as like the greatest advocates for peace and justice. I'm talking like, Martin Luther King or Gandhi or, Malcolm X or, the Dalai Lama or something. Like, if you ask them, they would tell you that they are just trying to keep positive 51% of the time.
That's right.
It's like all day long they're engaging in this wrestling match with that negative voice that is coming at them from the world or from them internally, and they're just like, you know what? I'm here every day to win. Yeah. And I don't have to win 90% of the time. I've just got to win enough that I'm ahead at the end of every day. And it's a tough thing because a lot of us, especially when we think of like our mental health, we're thinking like, how can we be happy all the time? It's just like, you can't be. You wouldn't be a person. You've been given this vessel to feel. And some days you're going to feel sad. And some days you're going to feel elation. Some days you're going to feel discouraged. And some days you're going to feel curious. And it changes moment to moment. And, so what I usually, say because I get approached all the time by people who say, hey man, I'm going through this really tough time, or I lost my sister last week and now we couldn't even decide whether we were going to come to show, but we did come to the show. And my answer or my response to them is usually the same thing. It's, I wish you ease of heart.
Yeah.
I don't wish that you're happy. I don't wish that you're, sad. I wish you ease of heart so that whatever is in you passes through with ease. And that's been my lesson, especially in the past few years of the pandemic, of just how many moments I got stuck, and was in pain and in sorrow and in depression and in anxiety and in constant worry. And then something would happen that would help me break through. It would either be a song, be sitting there and watching a film, and suddenly I burst into tears. It would be going down a water slide with my, 3-year-old. It would be something that would awaken me again to whatever is in my heart and let it pass through me with ease.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I found myself through, a lot since 2016, I guess, but like during the pandemic and everything, just feeling so raw at times and crying, and being okay with it. And then leaning on music, writing or, making music, recording, or just listening, somehow it kept me rooted. But it's good to hear you say that those feelings of sort of overwhelming need to cry, it was pretty real.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's healthy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. On the Soul Rocker album, I wrote this song, Nobody Cries Alone.
Right.
I was going through,
right.
A really tough time. My middle child was
I know.
needing a kidney transplant, and I was just like fun, like life to be overwhelming. I just burst into tears in the studio with the guys I was working with, and then we wrote the song Nobody Cries Alone, which to me is like, it's become a rule in our house and on our retreats. And is that, anytime somebody's in a place of deep emotion, someone else has to put their hand on them and just put their hand on their back, put their hand on their shoulder, and just let them know, like, we're here with you and it's okay. Let it out, let it flow, you know, and it's always healing. It's the great reset button on happiness is
Well said.
letting go of your sadness.
Yeah, beautifully said. Well, talking about, this kind of ties into that, but those of us who live this sort of live music loving life from either side of the stage, a lot of partying can come with that, right? And then even though
Hmm.
that's born from a desire to deepen the experience and feel the moment deeply, it can
Hmm.
sometimes lead to a dark place. And you've
Hmm.
always emphasized the connection between music and wellness. And I'm wondering how you think music can teach us to respect our own mental and physical health.
Hmm. Well, um, music has this ability to, you know, if you think about it, you can't see music, you can't hold it in your
Mhm.
hand, you can't touch it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. There has no physical weight to it, and yet 20,000 people will pack a stadium to
Mm.
have their eardrums tickled. the
Yeah.
tiniest, the tiniest organ in your body, your eardrums.
Right.
Uh, you know, and then the sense of other vibrations that are hitting your body in a way that this sound, this bass, this rhythm, these words, all these things combined that bring out emotion in you. And there's like a real magic to that. And um, it's so difficult to describe, and yet it is so tangible to everyone who experiences
Yes.
it. And um, in terms of wellness, I'm somebody who's throughout my life, I've dabbled in every form of wellness. Like
Yeah.
it's like, yoga, meditation, and running, and physical, like hit classes and weight training, and bike riding and swimming and mushrooms and feathers and crystals and massage and ointments, and like every bit of it I've tried. And
Yeah.
what I've found is that some things work for me that don't work for other people, and some things
Mhm.
work for other people that don't work for me. And um, it's best to be to remain in a place of non-judgment of what works for other people, and
Yes.
especially when it comes to spirituality. And um, a lot of times we think of spirituality as religion, um, and religion might help someone get to where they need to be to just to feed their spirit in that moment.
Mhm.
And for someone else, it might be reading a book or taking a walk or having a conversation with a friend. And there is no right way. There's as many ways as there are individuals
Mhm.
to spirit. And um, one thing I did learn though over the pandemic was that I used to always think, well, a big part of wellness was like, am I fitting in my jeans or not? Like,
Right.
and then I realized that wellness was just really a fancy word for happiness.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's my wife says this all the time, and she says, asking yourself whether you're happy or not is one of the most courageous acts you can ever do.
And difficult. Yeah.
Because if you're really being honest with yourself about, like, am I happy? Am I really, and what are the things that are making me unhappy or causing me dis-ease in my life? To really be forthright and honest with yourself about what those things are, and not just gloss over and think like, oh, the next concert or the next drink or the next time I have sex or the next
Mhm.
time I party with friends, that's going to bring me happiness, while neglecting all those other things underneath it that really are the things that are preventing you from being happy. Um, that's the opposite of wellness, and so um, yeah, for me, it's like asking myself that question over and over again. Am I really happy today? And what could bring me closer to happiness in this moment?
It's a beautiful answer. I wanna be respectful of your time, but could I ask you one more question?
Sure.
Um, As we sort of moved out of the pandemic, so to speak,
Mhm.
I've personally experienced something that feels like a massive exhaling, because even though
Mhm.
music was my savior throughout all of it, and I know you've spoken about this too, and it was a major boost for you too. Um, experiencing it with others has been really, in a communal sense, is something that I guess I didn't realize how much I missed it till went back
Yeah.
to it. Um,
Yeah.
can you talk about, because for you, I mean, you've been on the road, you've been performing your whole life, and all of a sudden you couldn't, right? You
Yeah.
found a way, and you did reach out to us, and we were touched by your music during that time, but
Mhm.
it's different than when there's 10,000 people, arm in
Yeah.
arm, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about your
Absolutely.
experience with that a little bit?
Well, I remember going through a deep, deep sense of sadness and questioning of like, what is my role in life? Because it was really super connected to, inspiring change through music.
Mhm.
And that's what I had committed my life to. And I'd done it for over 30 years. And, you always, it's like you look at, a great athlete, you think of like Michael Jordan or somebody who
Yeah.
like has done this, reach incredible heights of his abilities and his success in his game, and then his skills are waning, and he's thinking like, how do I, what do I do next after
Mhm.
this sport? Well, music is something that I always thought like, well, I'm going to be doing this like John Lee Hooker when I'm
That's right.
86 years old. I'm
That's the
gonna I'm gonna
goal.
still be still playing music. And um, I didn't get in this to get rich and retire. I got in this because I wanted to do it forever.
Right.
And I never imagined that it would be a invisible, you know, virus that
Mhm.
you could not even see. That would
Mhm.
be the thing that would stop us. I always thought it would be something like, or, just people weren't interested. That would be the number one thing. And the second thing would be, that there would be some physical attack on venues that
Mhm.
now people couldn't safely go to venues anymore, or something something like that. But I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined it would have been an invisible germ,
Yeah.
So to be faced with that, I was like, well, I don't know when we're going to come back, or even if we're ever going to come back. How are we going to, you know, as a world, come to grips with this? And then all the division that there was between how to solve the problem and
Ugh,
how to get back on track. It was just,
made
it
it
became
worse.
painful to watch and
Yeah.
made it worse. And so, while there was that, there was also, um, the fact that I lost my dad to COVID
Yeah.
in April of 2021. Um, and so while I was grieving every day, I'd spend time with my son, and I would do things that I had wished I had a chance to do with my dad, but never
Mhm.
had a chance to do because I only met my dad 10 times growing up,
Wow.
or 10 times as an adult, never met him at all as a child. And so, um, I always, you know, felt like there was things that I had missed. And so that became my way of grieving during the pandemic, was just do things with my little guy that I had wanted to do with my dad. And so while the pandemic was incredibly painful and made me question everything about me, like, you know, dedicated my life to this, and now it's stopped. And I felt a sense of, like a limb being cut off almost,
Yeah.
but then I was able to do all these amazing things because I had time,
Mhm.
and I couldn't go out and do stuff. And yeah, it was hard, financially. We had to figure out other ways to get through it, and couldn't earn a living the way that we had for so long. But um, really, the main thing was, just what it meant to think about life differently, um, and that was a universality. Like every single person in the world had to consider that, if even for a few moments, like how their life was going to be different from there forward. And so that was a big positive in it.
Mm. and returning now, it seems like it, the negativity kind of deepens the experience now of the release,
Yeah.
We're like, well, I'm so glad you're back. I'm glad that we all came through so far, and I appreciate your time and all these years of your artistry and your art and you bearing your soul and sharing joy with all of us.
Thank you, man.
I
Thanks
really
for having
appreciate
me
it.
on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. It's going to be a
All
beautiful
right.
night.
Enjoy. I can't
Okay,
wait.
Michael. Take care, man.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.